Hey viewers, I am DS and welcome to another episode on Channel NITT. This is an MBTI episode, and in this episode I will share with the viewers how to distinguish between an ESTJ and an ENTJ. If this is your first time on our channel, welcome. Do check out our other videos in our collection as well. We aim to produce videos that you cannot find anywhere else. So if you like what you get, do subscribe to our channel. If you happen to know a very demanding, bossy person, this person is likely to be a TE dominant user, and therefore he is likely to be either an ESTJ or an ENTJ. So how do you tell whether he is an ENTJ or an ESTJ? So in this episode, I will share with you 3 ways in which you can observe a person and tell whether he is likely to be an ESTJ or an ENTJ. So both the ESTJ and the ENTJ share the same dominant function TE and inferior function FI. This means that both of these MBTI types may come across as very harsh, demanding, goal-driven, sometimes very rude. But as you can see from this chart, the ESTJ and the ENTJ are essentially different because of their auxiliary and tertiary functions. The ESTJ uses introverted sensing, while the ENTJ uses introverted intuition as their auxiliary functions, respectively. Also, the ESTJ uses extroverted intuition and the ENTJ uses extroverted sensing as their tertiary functions. Because their auxiliary and tertiary functions are essentially different, we can also observe some subtle differences between the two of them, and that's where you can tell them apart.
There's so many differences, this is gonna be hard.
Because the ESTJ has introverted sensing SI as their co-pilot, this makes them more conservative, more able to adapt to routines than the ENTJ. Incidentally, because SI is the blind spot of the ENTJ may really have a trouble trying to keep to routines. So for example, as an ENTJ, I really want to have a beauty regime, like I want to wash my face, do moisturizing, cleansing and whatnot. But I usually cannot keep to it because I have a problem trying to stick to a routine. But I presume the ESTJ has definitely got no problem with that. And because of SI introverted sensing, the ESTJ is also likely to be more conservative, careful as compared to the ENTJ. And TE is actually more compatible with SI on the surface, so ESTJs look more consistent in their behaviours. The ENTJ uses TE and NI, and TE has to do with logic, NI has to do with intuition. Sometimes these two might clash and might produce results that you might not expect. So in a way, the ENTJ might sometimes appear to be more inconsistent or unpredictable. And because of this logic and intuition blending, which is very unusual for most people, what actually happens is the ENTJ might sometimes appear to be a walking paradox. I will explain that in another episode. Let's come to the second way you can use to distinguish between the ESTJ and the ENTJ. The ENTJ uses introverted intuition or NI as his auxiliary function. The NI is very good at finding relationships and drawing parallels. And therefore, the ENTJ is very much more likely than the ESTJ to use analogies in his or her speech. So what this means is that if you see that your mean boss uses a lot of pictorial description in his or her speech, then this person is more likely to be an ENTJ than an ESTJ. An ENTJ's essay or narration of events also tend to be more lively and detailed. So when describing something, or describing a sensation, or describing an experience, the ENTJ is more likely to draw a parallel than an ESTJ. So in another of my episodes, I will talk about the ENTJ use of analogies. Finally, another way to distinguish between an ESTJ and an ENTJ is by looking out for SE, extraverted sensing. So the ENTJ uses SE as his tertiary function, but SE does not fall into the ESTJ's cognitive stacks. So because of SE, the ENTJ is going to be more spontaneous and playful. So if you go to a club and then you see the ENTJ there, he's very likely to be dancing. But the ESTJ, if you find him at the club, maybe just standing there, drinking, that's all. The ENTJ's perspective is, if I am at the club, then what for stand there? Might as well just dance, right? I go there to dance. So in the eyes of the ENTJ, the ESTJ is very boring. And in the eyes of the ESTJ, the ENTJ can be quite frivolous. So can they become friends? Colleagues, maybe? This SE also plays a role in the dressing of the ENTJ. The ENTJ tends to prefer brighter colors, and he or she may dress in a very iconic way, like Steve Jobs with his turtleneck. So there is a very quirky sense of fashion that the ENTJ uses. So I remember when I was younger, around the age of 18, I really like to wear suspenders. I had 4 pairs of suspenders. So I'm already very tall, but I still like to wear suspenders because it gives me a very unique sense of individuality. And then sometimes I would just wear one and then I just release the other, and then people will be on the street looking at me, and I don't care. So the ENTJ is more likely to express himself very boldly because of the presence of SE tertiary function. The ESTJ, their dressing is always very modest, conservative. They can tell you that they have dress sense, but the colors that they choose are usually very dull and it doesn't vary. And for the ESTJ men, you might have trouble trying to get them to wear floral prints. Basically the same monochrome shirt. No change in hairstyle. Usually just white, blue, black. And incidentally, for the INTJ, because SE is their inferior function, they also tend to be very boring when it comes to clothes. They can tell you, I really like to wear clothes, I have dress sense, but same colors, white, blue, black. So if you can recognize this SE at play, then it becomes easier to distinguish between an ESTJ and an ENTJ. So to recap, the ESTJ is going to fare much better than the ENTJ when it comes to following routine and performing tasks like paperwork. The ENTJ might need a lot of motivation to follow through with that. Another way you can use to distinguish between the ESTJ and the ENTJ is through his or her speech. The ENTJ is very much more likely to use pictorial descriptions, including analogies. Finally, the ENTJ is more likely to be spontaneous and playful and sporting as compared to the ESTJ. The ENTJ also tends to have a more quirky dress sense than the ESTJ. In fact, both of them may have really very bad dress sense, but they think they dress very well. I really hope that you have enjoyed this episode. If you have not subscribed, do consider subscribing. And thank you for all my subscribers and viewers for supporting us so far. And I'll see you in our next episode. Goodbye!